I'm Chelsea, and welcome to This is Hard to Say. I'm here to talk about topics that are hard to say, which was originally birthed in 2020 from my lifelong eating disorder. I would love to educate people on disordered eating and also create a platform for us to talk about hard things like trauma, childhood, even simple interactions in our day-to-day life, joy, art. So this really is for all humans. And with that, we'll get going. Today, I am having a conversation with my friend Patrick Melroy. We are currently in his studio in Santa Barbara, California, called Miscellaneous Workshop. He is a local artist and a teacher. Sometimes he teaches at universities, museums, here in this space, and all kinds of other places. And what else would you like to let the people know?
I feel like we're in a Zoom call even though we're not.
We're not on Zoom, we're in person.
It's like that hangover though from the Zoom call. I'm so excited that I get to be on the microphone today and chat with you. It's very hard for me typically to listen to your show, taking notes over here and just being quiet. And it's not hard, it's good. I'm glad I get to have that time. But it's also fun to do this.
Yeah, so Patrick is the biggest supporter of this podcast. I record in his space. He helps me with all the tech stuff. He provides the things, and afterwards we always have a big conversation about the topics I talk about. And so I figured this is really the best first person to have on this podcast.
I feel really honored by that. Thank you.
Of course. So should we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's just cover all the notes that we have.
We have lots of notes. We're going to talk about some light stuff too today. We're going to switch it up.
Good.
But I did want to open up the platform since a lot of this is around disordered eating. I'd love to ask you, being a male, how has it been growing up with the societal pressures that I'm guessing are similar but also very different than me being in my body? So I'd love to know what those are for you. Do you still experience them? What did it take for you to find a comfortability in your body? Maybe art plays a role in this because it played a role for me. So yeah, I'll open the floor to what you have experienced.
Thanks. I don't know that I need the whole floor because I'll just ramble on about stuff that's inconsequential. But when I think about this topic, when I think about disordered eating, and I recognize it in my own experience of feeling like there were various times in my life where my appearance was very important to me, and the idea of what I was eating would be that would be good or bad. I used to go on what I used to call a Cliff Bar and whiskey diet when I would break up with somebody.
Yum.
And it was terrible, but all of my friends would kind of recognize that I was on the Cliff Bar and whiskey diet.
1 dram or 2 drams?
What's a dram?
2 finger bowl.
I think what you're describing there is there were a couple bars that I used to frequent regularly, and it was always like, if you're in a bad way, you go to like the Triple Nickel or yours, which are 2 Portland bars, because they have weak elbows and they just end up filling the bucket.
So like the sportsmen.
Yeah, exactly. Like those kind of like absurdly stiff drinks, and just drinking whiskey and ice. That was whiskey, ice, and a Cliff Bar. Felt like a reasonable thing to eat for a day. And so no, when we talk about like disordered eating and this idea of male culture, we get so many passes as men on what we're eating. And I don't think anybody has ever looked at me if I finished a plate of food and made any comment on it, or any judgment, or any reference to what I was doing. I don't hear that, I don't think about that, but I definitely recognize these various different times of my adult life, for sure my adult life, and certainly when I was a younger kid, that food was a friend or foe. Mm-hmm. And it comes and goes, and that I would be anxious and nervous about what I was eating. And then very often, if I travel too far into the being hungry, I feel like I'm just making really bad decisions just to battle the hunger. and then I beat myself up over that. So like, oh, I've waited too long, so I'm just gonna go eat some fast food, and then for the rest of the day, my body feels even worse than it did before I ate it, and then I'm also beating myself up over like, oh, you're so weak. Why can't you make better choices? You know, like just go get a salad. You should have just gone and got a salad. And it's like, well, I needed the food now. I needed to just eat and keep moving.
Well, and also I think our parents, and you know, I don't mean to speak super hard on stigmas or even create stigmas, but I do think our parents taught women more how to cook and take care of themselves in that fashion, and the boys were sent out to play. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that. And I guess my question is, actually, back up.
Yeah.
I want to speak to the comment. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone for seconds after recovery, because I didn't go for seconds before.
Sure.
I go for seconds now.
Yeah.
And I've had some comments. Oh, going for seconds? Wow.
It doesn't
look at you.
Which is in no way, there's no way they could have said it that it would have been. It's just like even recognizing. Oh, are you going to go get some seconds? Or you should. You know what? Fill up your plate again.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the buffet actually.
Any way that somebody says that.
Yeah. It just doesn't. Yeah, and this is where I would love to bring someone who works with eating disorders more on the podcast and talk about what do we say to people that isn't promoting or bringing someone down, or what do you say to someone who you know is struggling in front of you?
Yeah.
Because I used to make comments that was like in the red of, oh, she has an eating disorder, she's not okay. Comments such as like,
you would make to other people?
Yeah. How do you stay so skinny?
Oh, sure.
How do you eat that and keep up here?
Yeah.
How are you able to go out to eat? Things like that. Like, I would ask people those questions, which is, you know, part of me is like, wow, that's I'm ashamed of it, and part of me is like, that's very real, and I'm not the only one.
Yeah. I have countless cringy moments in my history where I have made comments to people, typically female presenting people, about eating, about quantity of eating, about or about appearance. Like, I have a super cringy one about a friend who had a baby, and we were like all at the lake, and I was trying to make some kind of like, wow, it doesn't even look like you had a baby. And it's like, what's that? What does a person who has had a baby look like? What's the up or down look on that one? And I buried my head in the sand after that, because I was just like, what was I thinking? That was such a blunder into trying to say to somebody, hey, I think you look so healthy right now. And yet, what a stupid, inconsequential, and I only hope that person has completely forgotten that I was speaking to them. That's all I can hope for. Fingers crossed that one didn't land the way I have certain comments in my head.
I mean, it's amazing that you're willing to sit here and look back and think that wasn't okay. Because a lot of times, sometimes we just say stuff and we're like, oh, backtrack, let me rewind. And you can't rewind. All you can do is say, you know, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
Take responsibility of what I said. So we've all made those comments. I still hear comments today about my appearance, and I still catch myself saying comments about other people. And really, I find that I see a friend that looks glowing and happy.
Yeah.
And I want to say something because I'm like, wow, I can tell in your energy that you're stoked right now.
That sounds great. I think that's great because you're not identifying their physicality. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not identifying a comparison of their physicality, or you're not identifying. You're not saying what's that thing, like a most improved award. You're not giving them a most improved award. But yet it's a tricky path to walk.
Yeah.
Because it is intent and it is reception of like what you say something. I've got, story after story of being a chunky kid. Chunky, what a word. And having these kind of moments of I got in junior high, I was a wrestler. And so if you want to talk about like constricting your diet for no good reason. Right.
And then, not drinking water. What is it? You don't drink water like the day you're going to wrestle because I've spoken to a lot of wrestlers who have come out of that and just been like, I for sure had an eating disorder. I purged.
Oh,
I restricted.
Every wrestler anybody who's ever participated in wrestling, um, it would be hard to convince me that you participated in wrestling and you didn't have some disordered eating, because the coaches insisted on it. Like, you have to cut weight. If you're cutting weight, then you are wrestling somebody who is smaller than. It was such a mess. This idea that, like, I would weigh in at like 158, and they're like, you have to cut down to 148. So it's like, you got to cut 10
pounds in 2 days.
Yeah, and it's like, trying to get down there was just impossible. And
I can't imagine. No,
and in high school, like, and also, I mean, like, some of your stories are so interesting. If you haven't listened to them, go back through this. But like, we were latchkey kids. We'd get home and have to make our own meals, and like that was a can of chunky beef stew from Campbell's.
Mine was cookie dough, frozen cookie dough a lot of the time.
Yeah. We had a microwave. That was the cookie,
oh yeah. Frozen pretzels.
Yeah.
Yep. Lived off those for a while.
Hot Pockets.
Yep.
Hot Pockets, Tostinos, pizza rolls.
Wow.
All
crazy.
That stuff. All that manufactured food. Like, and you look at the calories, and you look at the balance. I still struggle. My wife and I will kind of go back and forth about. She's like, "Oh, are we gonna have a vegetable with this?" And I'll just be like, "Oh yeah." Like, there's like this hole there's a blind spot in my cooking that's around vegetables, where it's like, oh yeah, that's just a thing that we include, but it's not. I don't treat it like the celebrity that it should be, or I don't emphasize it, because I didn't grow up. We had canned beans that were gray, and we had weird overcooked broccoli, and stuff like that occasionally. But for the most part, on a daily basis, we weren't putting vegetables in our bodies.
No, and it doesn't make them tasty either.
Yeah, no.
Because you're like, why would I cook broccoli when I used to eat them overcooked and they smelled like farts?
Well, and we didn't have olive oil. We didn't know what olive oil was.
No, it was like seed oil or vegetable oil. What was it? It was
Crisco.
Blue. Yeah.
Crisco.
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 Oh man.
Yeah.
Like butter.
Yeah.
Butter exists.
Yeah.
How amazing.
That was a beautiful pause for butter. Butter.
I just bought stickers that are literally a stick of butter, and it just says butter.
Nice.
And I'm like, this is literally how I live. Like, I freak out about butter.
My mom had a philosophy a rule about butter. It was the butter rule. You had to have 1.5 pounds of butter per person in the house at all times, with a 1 pound kicker.
What's the 1 pound kicker?
That's
like a backup?
And that's an extra. Yeah, it's an extra pound.
Wow, like your mom.
Yeah, she was great. But that didn't mean she understood vegetables. I mean, like.
Right. Well, also where you grew up, what you have available, resources are a really big part of this topic. Yeah. Not everybody has availability to go to the farmer's market and spend that time or money on shopping well for themselves. It's just, it kind of breaks my heart a bit.
Yeah, we had one grocery store. It was Fred Meyer's. That was the only grocery store we ever went to. And when I look back, when also we were like extreme poverty, like we were a single income family with 3 kids, and we remember, my brother and I still talk about this, about going on the first of the month with $100. That was the food budget for all 4 of us for the month. And
that's slim.
Yeah, mid 80s, like it got us there.
Right.
But you're eating a lot of starches, you're eating a lot of like, processed food, because the inexpensive stuff. And my mom knew how to make better and more stuff, but
having access to
it. And working, enough to pay for our lives.
Which is tiring. Having 3 kids, working, like that's a lot. A lot of people are in that position.
Yeah. Still.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to also ask about Henry.
Oh yeah.
So you have a little girl.
Yep, 5.5 years old.
Tell us about, what is that, like, how has disordered eating and your knowledge of it kind of affected your ability to dad, and how do you foresee navigating those waters?
Terrified. I'm terrified as a dad who has seen disordered eating up close. I'm terrified of what the world is going to show her and insist upon and like convince her of. I think she's super intelligent and she's very good at navigating her world. So I have a lot of confidence in where she's headed, but I am not confident as to what the world is going to do to her, and
Yeah.
what they're going to encourage her to do, and what
Yeah.
they're going to inspire her. You know, the princess motif, we didn't push for. You know, we didn't reject it, and we didn't like exclude it, but we didn't push for it. Like we didn't buy a ton of pink stuff for her, and we didn't show her a lot of princess movies and stuff like that. That just wasn't a narrative that we were super interested in. But the moment she got into school and kind of got cognizant of what was around her, you know, the princess narrative began, and we've shifted it into kind of hopefully into the bolder, more dangerous princess, like the princess who can do things that
the samurai princess.
Yeah, well, like the skilled princess.
Yeah.
Not the princess to be rescued, but the princess who leads the force, or you know, negotiates the peace, or things that are like more sophisticated. But that hasn't shifted the fact that like, you know, all of the costumes and all of the language around princessing and what people say to her just when they see her.
Oh gosh, isn't it crazy?
It's crazy.
I kind of am blown away just watching my friends with children, and how many people make comments that are so gender related.
Yeah.
Like societally gender related.
Well, and what she looks like. You know, they mention what she looks like a lot, and
that's intense. Like, give maybe one or two examples. What do people say?
Oh, you know, just look at that blonde hair. Oh, wait till she's 14. She's just gonna be what? What's she gonna be when she's 14? You know, like,
what are you gonna have to do when she's 14?
Yeah. Oh, that stuff. There's the constant thing about just like, oh, your dad, you need a good shotgun, and I'm always just like
not ready.
It's not even, well, they'll say that, like, oh, you're not ready for the kind of trouble she's going to give you and I'm just like, no, she won't. Like, no, that's not the relationship I'm going to have with her. No, that's not the relationship I'm going to have with the partners who she brings home. That's not the relationship I intend to have.
Yeah, forging new pathways for your family and how you interact with your daughter, which is so cool.
She's really important to me, and I'm really thoughtful about it. And I don't want to just default. I think she's going to be visually, aesthetically very appealing to people, and I want to make sure that I empower her not to rely on that as the way that she navigates the world. Right,
like rely on her personality, her skills, what she's into. I mean, she's already into so many art forms just hanging out here with you, and you being an artist.
I mean, I'm trying to sow those seeds, you know, so that when people say like, oh, wait till she's 14, and I'm like, yeah, the graphic novels she's going to be creating that are going to be awesome, you know, or the short films that she's going to want to do, or the dance recitals that she's going to be into, or the swim team she's going to join, whatever direction she ultimately kind of ends up. It's not going to be, oh, well, when she's 14 and she's dealing with, you know, all of the pressures of who she's going to date and how she's going to define herself by her partners. Like,
she may not even be thinking about that at 14.
Oh, I so hope. I so hope that we give her enough things to be excited about. Rock climbing, or hiking, or riding a mountain bike, or whatever there is in the world to physically interact with.
Well, and kind of fill your cup, right? Because otherwise it's like people are looking for others to fill that cup.
Yeah.
And she's getting a lot of that from you and Courtney, like as present parents.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope so. I think many of us, and I think many people listening to this might relate to like those junior high and high school experiences, and what it felt like to look around the class and look around your cohort, your peers, and to identify the people that were in charge of things, the people that had authority and the people that were powerful, typically had the bodies and the physiques and the faces and the clothes and the hair that looked like what was in media, what was in a movie, what was on TV, what was influencing us at the time, music and all that. And I think that like in hindsight, in looking back at that, those people weren't more interesting, or they weren't more capable, or they weren't more anything. The more they were was that they had access to resources.
Right. I was going to say it's who they know, what they had access to, and we are such a physically forward society.
Yes. Having parents that were coaching them along the way, and you know, putting them into situations where they were able to be physically fit, mixed with like, you know, comprehensive diets, mixed with like not poverty eating. And I mean, I'm talking poverty eating like like when I was wrestling, and it was like, what kind of meat? What's a meal? And it was like 2 slices of bread, 2 slices of bologna, and mustard, because there's no calories in mustard.
Right.
Mustard's
Yeah.
just
Lettuce, you could add lettuce. There's no calories in lettuce.
just flavor there.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was all pre-Atkins. Like it didn't occur to anybody to say that white bread was like something you shouldn't cut carbs. It was more just kind of like, don't cut. It was fats. We were told not to eat fats and sugar, which is so bizarre now.
That is so. I mean, you just made me remember when I was 22, working at the Long Beach Trader Joe's.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little studio. I was still tattooing. I was still doing both jobs, and I would buy all my groceries at Trader Joe's, but I would stock up on baby carrots and mustard. Not hummus, because hummus had calories, and I was starving. So I knew I would overeat, because when you're starving, you can't control. And it's all about control. So yeah, mustard's negative, so you're fine.
I still talk about my wife didn't grow up in poverty the way I did, and so she cannot associate with like the poverty meals that I the McDonald's, like everybody. I think people that grow up poor have their McDonald's order.
Oh yeah.
From their childhood.
Oh yeah.
And it's the same. You can still go order that food, which is so creepy. Like
I know.
You think
the sundaes? I loved the sundaes as a kid.
Mine was like when chicken nuggets arrived in the world. It was just like, oh, this is incredible,
amazing, and it's a kid meal, and you get a toy, and then there's a play area.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a babysitter for parents.
Yeah. This is still my wife is still. We go back and forth around like exposing Henry to these kind of mass-produced foods.
Yeah.
And it's tricky because there's times where, like we were on a road trip to Arizona in the middle of the pandemic, and it was just impossible to really like
get right food.
Yeah, and we were, we're on like a 9-hour road trip, and it's like, and we stopped at this one place to go to the bathroom, and I think like we got off the freeway to go to the bathroom, and the only place that really made sense was McDonald's.
I would say it's like Carl's Jr., Starbucks, and McDonald's is what you pass when you're going through like no man's land.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we went to McDonald's, and we got her a hamburger, and like a kid's Happy Meal, hamburger Happy Meal, and she ate it. She ate the whole thing. And it was like, we had this whole moment, because this is the other thing with my daughter, is that she does not have a voracious appetite for anything but chocolate.
I love that. At least she's getting magnesium.
Yeah, okay. So she loves chocolate, but there's very rarely where she'll just kind of eat. Like she always pulls up. She never really stuffs herself. And see, even that, like, I feel sensitive.
Having access to food, like she knows that it's abundant.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Like that is it switches that, because so eating disorders are so closely related to scarcity, and when scarcity is in one area, it's in all areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the and I learned this through my own battle with an eating disorder and not having resources and not having food available aside from frozen pretzels and Hot Pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And also when I started going through recovery, I started learning that everyone else is dealing with scarcity when it comes to eating disorders. And so when there's an abundance of food available, when she knows she can ask you guys and you're like, yeah, well, we have options, it's always here, then that changes that game in your mind.
I mean, I'm really optimistic. I'm optimistic that we're creating an adventurous eater who is able to kind of like try things that are unfamiliar. I as a child was the kid who was bringing a hamburger, French fries to the Chinese restaurant, eating under the table, because I couldn't deal with. I mean, when you go through a divorce and you go through like poverty, and there's a real like, the only thing I was in charge of as a kid was what I put in my mouth.
Yeah, that's literally where it starts.
Yeah.
The only thing you can control is the intake of anything. You can't control exactly.
I can't control, and so
you can't control where they choose to eat. You can't. Yeah, no, that is huge. That's huge.
Well, and also there's this moment, I think, where, and I've seen this with other boys in my family, who, let me try to find the right way to put this. The car is going where it's going, and it's going to a place that you're not in charge of and you're not in control of. And then you say, I can't eat there. And they go, okay, fine. Like, we'll swing through McDonald's for you, and then we'll go there. So now the car and everybody in it is doing a thing that's for you, and suddenly you become the center of everybody's agenda. Just for a second, or not a second, but just for a few minutes, and it's annoying, and everybody's not happy about it, but still, you exist. And I know that seems so insane that's where we're drawing like validation and existence from, is to say like, oh well, if I got to steer the car as a 9-year-old, and they bought me a cheeseburger, a hamburger, not cheeseburger, that's crazy. I would never have cheese on a burger when I was 9. Like literally,
that's a foreign substance.
3 ingredients. Things can have 3 ingredients.
Yeah.
If they have more than 3 ingredients, it's
out of control.
I had this whole moment. I was at Brian Spiesman's house, and Jan Spiesman, a very nice woman, it's the height of the 80s, and she says, Patrick, do you want to stay for dinner? And I said, what are you guys having? And she said, we're having burritos. And I said, I'm allergic to burritos.
Yeah.
And she said, well, what?
I know that well.
Yeah, she's like, well, what part of I haven't made them yet. What part of the burrito are you allergic to?
You're like the whole thing.
Because I didn't know what...
Anything in a tortilla is an allergy response.
I was such a milquetoast kid. I just was like, I don't really understand burrito. When you say that word, I don't really know what that means.
Literally, it's a blanket you can put anything in.
Yeah, but nobody explained
Right,
it to me.
right, totally.
We didn't have burritos at home, so I mean...
Yeah,
you know,
what's a burrito?
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to say that. So instead I went with, I'm allergic to burritos. And I really think, I think Jan might still be alive, and I probably owe her a phone call. Not that she'll remember that event, but...
she might.
The time that kid was allergic to burritos.
You never know.
I've spent my life kind of navigating, like talking my way out of things like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I played that game so well. I mean, I didn't go to half of the things I got invited to because of dealing with food.
There? Oh
well, there
gosh.
would be food there. And when you're totally deprived of nutrients, you can't control yourself.
So you would constrict yourself from the location, huh?
Basically, an eating disorder will steal your whole life. It'll steal having relationships with anybody, intimately, or it's basically a punishment, right? You're punishing yourself. You are withholding pleasure in any way. So travel's out of the picture, because what are you going to do about food when you're traveling? Going to a pool party is out of the picture, because oh my gosh, you're going to be expending energy and you're going to be starving, and there's probably going to be food there, and you're not going to be able to stop yourself from eating all the chips. I mean, it just is layered and layered and layered, and quite terrible.
Yeah, hearing that, I have this, because I have all of these, like, I have history and hang-ups on food, and I definitely have moments of disordered eating that I can identify. I can point out, and if I tell the story, you're like, oh yeah, that's disordered eating. But I don't think I ever got to a place where I would think about, I'm trying to think if that, because like that story, like I understand everything you're saying. I understand the idea of like not going to a place because there won't be anything to eat there. I'm just trying to think if there was a time where I was like that kind of like out of sync or whatever.
Well, I think the burrito is a good example of exiting a state, right? Because you're like, for you it was probably unfamiliar territory, but I've also exited spaces where I'm like, oh, food's coming out, I gotta go.
I remember being like in my first job as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old in Los Angeles, and we'd go to lunch with everybody. And my boss at the time, he had kidney stones, and so he had cut like everything out of his diet until he was eating just he would go to McDonald's. His McDonald's order was a McChicken sandwich, the grilled one, so no breading on it, and the bun, and that's it. That's all. No, just dry. And
no minerals,
because
nothing.
Of
the stones.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And before that, he would keep a little mini fridge next to his desk full of milk and Oreos. And he would sit while working and just eat milk and Oreos, and then he had kidney stones, and it was a nightmare, and so he stopped. He just cut everything out of his diet. Oh my gosh. But so he gave me some cover, because I had arrived as this kind of kid, from middle America into Los Angeles, and everybody around me is eating like a normal adult, and I am eating, we would go to El Torito, which was a Mexican restaurant, and I would order fajitas, the chicken fajitas, and I would eat just the chicken and the tortillas. and I would always order a side of shredded cheese,
Mm.
which was always so difficult to explain. There's my 3 ingredients, right?
Mhm.
Chicken, tortillas, and
Cheese,
shredded
yeah.
cheese. And it was so difficult to explain to anybody, but at least I wasn't Mike, because Mike was like,
Oreos and milk.
yeah, he was eating like he would. Well, what was funny is he'd order the same thing, and there became this evolution moment of like after working there for a couple of months, and somebody had asked me like, "What's your favorite meal?" Like what like Patrick, you're such a plain eater. Like, what's your very favorite meal? And I'm like, oh, I went to this restaurant once and I had this New York strip steak and it had these like really incredible roasted potatoes and this like asparagus, and he's like, your favorite meal is meat and potatoes? And I was like, I mean,
yeah,
but no, you don't understand. Like, there's a jazz band, and they're just like, no, that's so basic. You're so basic. And they didn't call it that back then, but it was just like, I think they called me milk toast back then. It was like, you're so milk toast, so middle America, like white bread. You don't know anything. And I was like, I know stuff. And,
do you have a favorite meal now?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, maybe the yellow curry at like the northern curry at Empty Bowl. I think that's, I could eat that any day of the week.
Okay.
And I crave it regularly. And Henry loves it, which also makes me very excited.
Right, yeah, because that's a really kind of complex meal.
There's a lot of flavors in
right.
it, and it's not, and you can't see it. You got to dig it out of the thing, and like, and it's messy and it gets everywhere. And
yeah.
It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous, hot, buttery, lovely.
Yeah, which is a local noodle spot in town.
It's so great. And that's my goal is that when she gets to college, and somebody's like, "What's your favorite meal?" She says, "My dad's curry," or "My dad's, tikka marsala," or "My dad's Penang curry," whatever. Like that there's something that I make that is her comfort food. I want to be the one who makes her comfort food. That's a goal.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm constantly trying to like create comfort food for her that's not just base level
chocolate.
Well, and we're going through this cycle right now where it's like, there are certain things that are just surefire hits. And then there's other things where it's like, I mean, just this morning, getting ready for school, she wanted fried egg whites. She's not into fried eggs anymore with yolks. So
yolks kind of creep me out sometimes too. I mean, they have like a weird smell and flavor, so I can totally relate.
Sure. So, but we're trying to get enough protein into it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so I crack 2 eggs and I separate the yolks and I put the yolks in a little cup to use for something else. And then I get out our giant heart cookie cutter. And I use the egg whites to make, I make the cookie cutter, I make a heart-shaped fried egg whites. So it stands up a little bit, so you get a little more thickness in it. And then I give that to her with a slice of whole wheat bread with some strawberry jam on it. And I bring it out and I put it there, and she's like, I wanted a fairy bread. And I'm like, fairy bread, which is Nutella on a piece of whole wheat bread. But I'd use the last piece of whole wheat bread to make the jam toast. So
in a pickle.
Yeah, so what we had in there was the everything bread from Dave's Killer Bread.
Yeah, which is good.
It's super good, but it's seedy and savory and like it's like an everything bagel, but it's a piece of bread. And she says, "Can you make that the fairy bread?" And I said, "Yes." And so
it's gonna be a little oniony.
Yeah, so I put Nutella on it, and I cut the crust off. So it took some of the seeds away. And I brought it out to her, and she said, "That doesn't look right." So
I love kids.
Yeah, so I go
They're
back.
so attention to detail.
Yeah, so I go back in the kitchen, and I make another fairy bread, and now we're out of Nutella. I use the last of our Nutella to make the second piece of fairy bread. That is now on an uncut, like on a piece of Dave's Killer Bread with just Nutella. Any parent out there right now will understand this entire fight I'm having. and also we're like in the time crunch of like, we've got to get to school.
Yeah, in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've got to get food in her so that we can get to school. So I bring this out to her, and of course I've left everything else in front. Like so now on her table in front of her is egg whites in the shape of a heart that's been cut up with big good molten salt on it, and a slice of whole wheat bread with this really beautiful organic strawberry jam, and then a crustless Dave's Killer Bread whole wheat Nutella slice, and now a full crusted slice of Nutella too.
And is she waiting to eat anything until it's a complete for her?
Until she sees the thing she wants to eat, right?
Okay.
And so she comes and she sits at her table, and I go to do the other 15 things that I need to do. And my wife says, "Do you see what she's eating?" And I'm like,
The strawberry bread?
The strawberry bread. And then,
She just needed her options in front of her.
Apparently, and I'm just like holding it all inside.
You're just like, okay, well, you are 5.5 and you are experiencing life.
Because we're not going to have a fight over food.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
I'm not going to challenge her on I'm not going to shame her.
Right, and you just literally showed her abundance.
Yeah.
But also, where's the line where you're like, okay, well, now we're wasting food? That's what I kind of question sometimes, is like, this is abundant, but also... But she's little, and she probably has no idea what she wants. She just knows in that moment, I might want that, but oh wait, this is actually good.
Well, and the thing is that there's a lot of times where I just it's called taking a flyer. It's an old circus term. When you go, you don't get instruction to do it. You just do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking a risk. You're hoping that the person's on the other end of the trapeze to catch you. So you just let go, and maybe you hopefully got it right. And so the egg and the jam, that was a flyer, and then cutting the crust off the toast, that was like, I think an experience. Like she doesn't typically like crescents, certainly with all the seeds on it. Like that's an extra thing. And all of these things are such, like, right now at 5.5, like, we're in and out. If we try to hold ground on something, we could lock it in permanently. Mm-hmm. That this is like,
right,
I don't need crust on anything, Dad. And it's like,
right,
because we had a battle over it. So instead, we're just like, if you didn't, like, we're just easy flowing.
Right.
And things go back in the fridge and they get saved for later.
Yeah.
They get reintroduced.
Or one of you guys eat them.
That's a real struggle.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you could easily just eat everything your kid doesn't eat.
But our other struggle is that there are ramifications too if she has too much sugar and too much chocolate.
Right, and you're sending her off to class.
Well, and she's just harder. She's hard. She's deregulated. Like she falls out of regulation with it's not. And again, it's like we all would. If you do a bump of cocaine, you're not going to be well regulated.
Nope. And you're also not going to be aware that you're unregulated.
If you eat nothing but kale all day, just nothing but kale.
Kidney stones.
Well, you're gonna be deregulated. You're not gonna be
right. Yeah, you're not gonna have brain power to like
cope and function
and pause and chill out.
Right.
Like I had no idea I could be less triggered just eating food.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
So it's very real.
We work to say no when it's appropriate to say no, and we work to also work to just be like, listen, I need you to have a bowel movement.
Right, and it's not a big deal. Just eat something. What do you want to eat? Like, let's just get this over with.
We've got lots of options here in the house, and like, let's work through them. And also, I mean, there's lots of stuff that we've just edited out. We're like, well, we're not going to stock that anymore.
Right, which I think is fine because there's so many options to have available.
Yeah. There's also certain things where like mac and cheese. She'll eat mac and cheese at places, and people make her mac and cheese, and then when I try to make it for her for whatever reason, it doesn't fly. Which is fine, because I don't need mac and cheese to be like her go-to thing.
Right.
But like pork tenderloin, she's all about pork tenderloin.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she loves a pork tenderloin.
Has she had pork belly?
I don't know if she has. I don't typically. Again, it just goes back to this thing. I said to my mom one day, she was hauling my nephews around, and they were having this conversation around. They had talked her into going to McDonald's, and it had this like triggering flashback for me of like, oh, that's where you've made them into me. You did the same thing to them that you did to me, which was like using the substitute, like this thing of getting. And I said, you don't have to go to McDonald's. You could just like, you guys could go to Safeway, you could go across the street, go to the grocery store, like go, you could plan ahead. You could know that when they get in the car that they're going to be hungry in 30 minutes. So why don't we get some food in them before we go? You can make a plan.
Right.
And she's like, well, sometimes, there's just no chance to make a plan and blah, blah, blah. And it's just there and it's so easy. And I said, have they ever eaten a Jack in the Box? Have you ever taken in a Jack in the Box? Knowing that she would never go to Jack in the Box. And she's like, no, I never go to Jack in the Box. I'm like, so it does sound like it's a choice. You clearly have made a choice about where to go.
Right.
Like there are certain places that you're willing to forfeit. You're willing to let them eat the junk at McDonald's.
Yeah.
But you're not willing to let them eat the junk at Jack in the Box because you don't.
Which has better breakfast, in my opinion.
Sure. I just and I wasn't trying to shame or argue with my mom because I loved her, but I was more realizing it for myself in that conversation.
Right. Yeah. And what's the word I'm looking for? Like trained you to think the way you did about it.
Food. My mom was an incredible cook, and she had an incredible. She had those old world skills, right? She could bake a chicken.
Yeah.
that was like you're like, that's an incredible chicken. She could make fried chicken that makes you weep. You stand next
I
to
love fried chicken.
Yeah, you stand next to the pan, and every time she pulls a piece out, she puts it on the plate, and you just eat it, burning your mouth off. My friend Josh and I would stand there just eating the wings as they came out.
Yeah.
So good. But when you apply a 10-hour workday, and the innovation of huge industrial foods from the 80s,
yeah,
and it really affects the diet.
Totally. I mean, I can't imagine being a single mom of multiple children, working overtime, and then cooking. And also, how do you manage homework, play, after school activities? Oh shoot, bedtime was an hour ago. Like, how do you do it? It's like impossible, and people are doing it left and right.
People are doing it, and I applaud them, and I am so inspired by them.
Moms have the hardest job.
For sure. But at the same time, like, I can recognize what that did to me. Recognize like how damaging it was to not understand food because she didn't have time to explain it. And also there were the deficits in her own understanding of food.
Right. I mean, that's like, our parents were the children of people in the Depression, and they grew up being like, no, only one cookie, even though they had a tub that was going stale. Yeah. Like my grandma, I remember my mom would drop me off at my grandma's anytime I was sick. That's a whole other podcast episode. Sure. And my grandma would make ginger snap cookies that were terrible, but it was like the one thing I could eat as a snack. And
you were allowed to eat? Or that was presented
you
to
weren't really allowed to eat anything outside of mealtime at her house, but she would allow me a cookie, but only one, because even though they're going stale, she lived through the Depression. Yeah. It's just like, wow, like scarcity is just so prevalent.
Yeah. There's I pause and it's not a cringe, but it's like it's definitely like there's some trauma, that drums up that. I'm thinking of my great grandmother's house, who had the cookie drawer. And it was all about kind of distracting the adults long enough for one of us to get into the cookie drawer. And so I'm interrogating that, going like, oh wait, she had these certain cookies. She had the chocolate covered grams, or she had the round wheels, the wagon wheels with the
with the stripes.
Yeah.
I know all about those. My grandma had those too.
Yeah, and that was the like. Nobody else ever had them. They were always just at a grandparent.
Right, yeah, always.
But there was this one drawer in the kitchen where those were at, and I remember it being kind of like a mission to try to get to those cookies because of that same, exactly what you're describing. Like you could eat.
You weren't allowed to have them otherwise. It was it was off limits.
Well, and then whatever meal was being presented was like
disgusting, like peas that were cooked wrong.
Meatloaf.
Oh God, meatloaf!
I can now that I make it.
Right.
I can make my own meatloaf. But like,
nope, can't have grandma's though.
There was, I don't know, maybe it was delicious. I don't know, because I was in my own little
You were
world.
forced. Yeah. I think when you force someone to eat a certain thing on their plate, or have the rule in the house that's like, you have to clear your plate or else you can't leave the table, like, that's kind of insane. Yeah. And I understand people who have those mentalities are also people who probably don't have access to resources the same way. So there's that. It's so layered. Yeah. It's so layered.
Our relationship with food, right, it's such a it's a sophisticated relationship that we not pretend isn't, but like we don't put it in the. I feel like the conversation that we have about our food is not what am I looking for here? It's not as treacherous as it really is. Like, the conversation doesn't highlight how complex and problematic our relationship with food is. Yeah. And instead we gloss over things and we try to like muscle through them, or we celebrate it in really like foodie culture, and this conversation around foodie culture and the celebrity of chefs and the celebrity of different restaurants, and this idea of how we spend money on food and where we spend money on food it's not related to the problematic struggles. It's instead this, we're trying to just be really excited about it and tell these like elaborate stories about like, we went to Bell's up in Los Alamos and oh my God, and it was good, but we treat it like these are the markers of culture, like we're putting culture into food.
But do you have the resources to go to that place and have that experience?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, going out to dinner I have so much to say about this, especially because I also worked in that industry, but
Oh, sure, yeah.
it's like, if you break it down, I think it's quite disgusting. It's like cooking a great meal for friends. Like, I have great friends in this town who are chefs, but which is beautiful. Having a supper party or a restaurant where that is the heart of it, it's beautiful. But the culture of people going and expecting a certain level of service from someone who's not getting paid enough to give that service just blows my mind.
We were in Serbia years ago, collaborator Katie McCarthy and I, and we were wandering around Belgrade. We were there for an arts event, and there was no place to eat out.
Weird.
Because they don't eat out there.
Oh, they all cook.
They all cook.
Yeah. And
so why would you you could get coffee?
Yeah, that's like the basis of my explanation here, is like, why are we going out?
Yeah.
It's like, what is that, consumerism, capitalistic, like, thinking?
Well, and also somewhere along the line there became the industry grew into it, right? Like there's a subsidized version of it that makes sense. So
which is sharing cultures, which is beautiful.
Well, so yeah, like exactly. Like old restaurant, or like the different models of restaurants would be like like a family-owned restaurant. All the people in the family work at that restaurant, and the people who are populating it probably work nearby.
Or know the family.
Yeah. So that makes sense that you're making more food than your family needs, and you're selling that food to other people. Great, that makes sense. But then somewhere along the line, it's like diners and like when you think about the restaurants that our parents had access to going to, they were like high-end steakhouses. There were maybe delis, and there were diners.
Right.
And then fast food arrived.
Right.
And then fast food became, just smaller, like faster food, and it was subsidized by people who didn't need to necessarily make a living working at a fast food restaurant. High school kids.
Right, yeah.
And so you've got kids that already have their housing paid for by their parents. They already have and they're in high school, so they don't want full-time jobs, so they're giving them very, part-time schedules. And that subsidized the entire fast food industry is created by subsidized work from a population of people and this is that whole thing about like, well, you don't want to grow up and flip burgers, and it's like, you can't. It's not possible.
Yeah, you can't survive. But I do want to know, so where'd you end up eating in Serbia?
Oh, we didn't.
Was there a market you could at least buy things at? And
yes,
but then you obviously have to place to cook it.
We ended up at the farmer's market, and we bought some bread and some really elaborate smoked meats and some weird
lovely.
And some weird kind of like a feta cheese.
Oh.
And some tomatoes. And
nice. That's a pretty complete
array. Feels fine. And then we went to a park, and we sliced it all up and ate it like that. There were a couple parks that had cafes in them. But they didn't have.
Was it like espresso? It
was espresso, beer and wine, and then and they didn't. I'm trying to remember. They didn't have. There wasn't like you couldn't get a sandwich.
Right.
They would occasionally have some pastries or some like small things.
Ah.
But it was like it took us. We were there for almost a week, and we just couldn't figure out the food. We were just like, we don't understand. Like, where does anybody eat here?
At their house.
Yeah.
They cook elaborate meals at their house.
They were all, and also I don't know if you know, like Serbia is like everybody's 7 feet tall, and they're all gorgeous, and they're all, see, this is back to this like, they're skinny, and they look like basketball stars and supermodels just everywhere you go, and so but also it's because they don't have a high sugar diet. They don't have
they probably walk everywhere.
They walk everywhere. They have good public transportation. Really incredible.
And they're
buses.
cooking. They're cooking.
They're cooking at home. They're being, and there's somebody in the household who that is the priority of what they do. There's a, whereas versus us who we don't have time.
We never have time to take care of ourselves.
No, we eat out because because and it goes and because we can.
And also a lot of us aren't taught to cook anymore, which is sad.
And then back to that thing that I was saying to my mom about you knew you were going to be hungry. What was the plan?
Yeah.
It's like you left the house without a plan for food. Could you imagine going away from your food source? If you say your house is your food source, that's where your food is at. Your food does not exist in restaurants around town. Then you would just make the plan. Anticipate, and not in that overly controlling way.
No.
Just ask yourself the question before you leave, where am I going to eat in 3 hours?
Yeah, for my future self.
because the future self is going to be hungry.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's actually a freedom that I've had in recovery is not stressing so much about finding food or getting food or having access to food. And granted, sometimes I only have access to like a bar that's in my car.
Sure.
But that was a really big moment of freedom to think about, okay, well, I'm going to go, like today, I'm going to go record this podcast so I have a bigger breakfast.
Okay, yeah.
And then afterwards, I'm going to make sure lunch is priority.
Right.
Things like that. It's like I'm thinking about my future self when I'm either taking snacks, taking something to go, or planning to grab something somewhere.
Because you also know that the future self that didn't make that plan is going to make a bad decision.
Oh, yeah.
And that bad decision is either going to be skipping.
Right? Most of the time it was, yeah.
Wow. Mine was always like, I know my bad decision is going to be, a fast food.
Yeah, see, I would just not eat.
And fast food, and here's the struggle with fast food is the portion choice in fast food. As an adult male presenting person, like, you get the meal, and they give you a meal, and you paid for it, and I can't just throw away half of those French fries.
Right, and it's also, I don't think it's as filling as whole foods that you would either make or have someone prepare for you a different way.
No, and it's and now anymore, I mean the price, and so you're beating yourself up on price. Like this is my is thing of like, and this was yesterday. So yesterday,
it's fresh.
I'm here in the studio. I'm working on this project. I realized that I didn't plan lunch. I didn't make a good choice. The fridge in the studio doesn't have anything in it. I didn't bring anything with me. I didn't plan. And so I hop on the bike and I run over to KFC. And it's like, and to the point where I gave myself that permission, like, oh, you know what? You're just gonna grunge it out. You're just gonna like go to KFC and get a fried chicken sandwich because nobody's looking and it's fine. There's no observation of you, so you can make this bad decision. I'm gonna ride by 4 really good taco places that I like, but I'm gonna go get this fried chicken sandwich. And I get there and I have it, and it's the story as old as time. Like, it's. There's nothing about it that was good. There was nothing about it that was enjoyable. There's nothing.
They like mayonnaise there, and I don't like mayonnaise.
Any way you cut it, I was at least halfway through it and going, "What am I doing? What is this? Why would I?" And it felt like disordered eating. It felt like I was.
Yeah, because recovery taught me that sometimes I have to eat like that, and it's okay. Like, there's so much pressure societally for us to choose organic and healthy and whole and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's kind of disorder. Like, that is categorized under orthorexia, which is an eating disorder. It's a known eating disorder. The pressure to eat perfectly healthy and obsess over labels, obsess over oils and what's in it and all this stuff. And it's like, just let it go. Sometimes you just need calories and it's okay. And that's better than not having calories.
So what you just described is something I experienced standing in the food court of a mall.
Yeah.
And like looking around like, there's nothing I can eat here. Like there's nothing that rises to the level of what you just, those things you can tick off where you're like, it's all prepackaged. It's all just microwaved. It's all just junk. This is all hollow calories that doesn't, and they're not even good. They're not even like, it's
not like, satisfying.
Right, and I think that's what I felt yesterday at KFC, where I was just like, and I just realized I shouldn't name the restaurants, but it's like feeling this frustration of like, you're having a cheat meal and it's not even worth it.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like if you're gonna have a cheat meal, like have there be some highlights.
I mean, tacos are around here at least are like pretty. I feel like you can get a $3 taco.
Chelsea, I have a taco map.
Yeah.
That has like my 18
That's
favorite
amazing.
places to eat tacos. Like I love tacos.
Yeah.
I have like there's one of the best things that ever happened was just down the street in front of the hardware store. El Pastorcito.
Oh, the taco truck?
Yeah, El Pastorcito started setting up their truck and I'm just like, this is amazing. This is gonna solve all my problems.
You're still going to KFC. And also don't beat yourself up over it.
Yeah,
it's okay. Because next time you can pause and say, well, last time I wasn't satisfied with KFC, so I'm going to actually just walk a block and go get a taco.
I appreciate that you think that.
Well, now you get to instill it and practice it. It's a practice.
Yeah, it is. I think that forgiveness of self and not being so critical of self is hugely important.
Hugely
important.
Huge. In all areas too, not just disordered eating.
Yeah.
Like also our interactions with people, our relationships, our conflicts, our joys, like compassion is key.
And it's hard. And it's hard every single day to be compassionate with yourself and then also with everybody else around you.
Totally. It's a lot of energy. Thank you for being here. You can find me on Instagram and the web. Instagram is @thisishardtosay with a period between each word. The website is www.thisishardtosay.me. My more personal and graphic design account is @ChelseaWillett_designs. Those will also be in the show notes below. If you want to support this project and podcast, there's a few ways to do so. You can head to my website, click the support button in the top right of the navigation, and that will lead you to how to help. You can also submit your own story anonymously, or you can share who you are. If this podcast spoke to you, it would be so appreciated to subscribe, leave a review, click some stars, and share it with your people. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.